Signs of the times. Though no one knows when Jesus Christ will return, we should carefully consider what appears to be signs that this awesome event may be near. Here now is Gene Getz.
Chapter 13, here in Isaiah, is an oracle against Babylon. Stated rather directly, here's what we read: an oracle against Babylon that Isaiah, son of Amos, saw. Now, Babylon is a very significant city historically. In fact, if you go way back, Babylon, at two moments in history, or periods in history, was probably the largest city in the whole world. They say that it could have reached up to 200,000 people. Now, that's huge for that particular time in history. And Isaiah prophesied the future destruction of Babylon. And we know that this happened in 539 BC when the Medes and the Persians captured the city. Here in verse 17, we have a specific reference to this, and we can call it the near view. Again, over a century before it happened. Look, I am stirring up the Medes against them. That is against Babylon. And this is God at work. I am stirring up the Medes against them, who cannot be bought off with silver, who have no desire for gold. In other words, what he basically is saying is there was a lot of bartering, there was a lot of negotiation, there was a lot of, I'll give you this if you'll give me that, or you'll protect us and we'll do this. In fact, Israel got involved in that and really violated the will of God. Well, that happened with Babylon, but God said, no more. The Medes are going to destroy you, and the Babylonians together. Now, you have this long history as far as Babylon is concerned. But as you read about this, and by the way, Babylon is located just 53 miles south of Baghdad in southern Iraq, right on the Euphrates River. And it's still there today as far as some of the buildings. I'll say something about that in a moment. But you see, here's a very interesting far view. In Isaiah chapter 13, verse 19, we read this: and Babylon, the jewel of the kingdoms. And of course, here Isaiah is recognizing what kind of a city this was. Just incredible. Calls it the jewel of the kingdoms. The glory of the pride of the Chaldeans will be like Sodom and Gomorrah when God overthrew them. Now, here's something we need to underscore. Isaiah prophesied, it will never be inhabited or lived in from generation to generation. A nomad will not pitch his tent there, and shepherds will not let their flocks rest there. So, here's the observation. After Babylon was destroyed in 539 BC by the Medes and the Persians, it has been inhabited again. Well, you look at that and you say, did Isaiah make a mistake when he said it will never be inhabited again after it's destroyed? I don't believe he made a mistake, because you're moving into another far view to be able to understand what's happening here. It has been inhabited again, which would mean that Isaiah was also referring to a future event involving the destruction of Babylon, which raises a question. If Isaiah was referring to the literal city of Babylon, by the way, I believe he was, when will it be rebuilt and then destroyed and never, ever inhabited again? Well, let me show you a picture. That basically is Babylon today. It is inhabited. It has been since it was destroyed by the Medes and the Persians. In fact, Saddam Hussein actually was rebuilding Babylon when the war took place. He proudly portrayed, actually on banners, that he was going to be the next Nebuchadnezzar, because that's where Nebuchadnezzar had his palace. And he began rebuilding the process. Obviously, it was stopped. But if you go to Babylon today, this is basically what you'll see, plus other scenes of what has taken place. Now, here's an interesting quotation from a researcher. And he says this: Bible prophecy is quite clear that there will be an actual Babylon on the plains of Shinar, Iraq, that's Iraq, in the end times. This city will become the headquarters for the end-time world system led by the beast Antichrist and his kingdom that will rule the world. Scholars question how this poor, insignificant place can someday become the Babylon that is expressed in the book of Revelation. The likely answer is oil, the Antichrist, and Satan. Now, in terms of Revelation, this gives us an insight. Here's what we read. This is in chapter 18, verse 21. Then a mighty angel picked up a stone like a large millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, in this way, in other words, he's illustrating, this is a metaphor. In this way, Babylon, the great city, will be thrown down violently and never be found again. So the question is, when will Babylon be rebuilt? If indeed this is a literal reference to the city of Babylon, which many believe it is. And I personally believe it is. I was talking with Dr. Charlie Dyer. It's a good friend of mine. Before the Iraq War, he actually visited the location by invitation of the Iraqi government before the war started and saw all of this rebuilding. And on the phone, we were talking about how this could happen. Now, my personal opinion is, and I think he would concur, is that let's say the rapture of the church takes place before this meeting's over. All the airline pilots that are believers disappear. All those in government who are believers disappear. All Christians disappear. Your home is left standing. Your car is in the driveway. What happened after 9/11? What happened to our economy? What happened to the airline industry? Well, can you imagine a crisis of that magnitude? It doesn't take much imagination to realize that America, as we know it today, could literally almost disappear. Our strength is gone. Is it possible, then, that the Antichrist emerges? And it doesn't take long to build a city when you've got everything coming in, all of the riches. And this could become then the center of the world in relationship to a city. That, indeed, God then is going to destroy. And Isaiah's prophecy will come true to the exact detail. Never, ever to be inhabited again. I think that's a very strong possibility. Now, the question for application is simply this. If the original city of Babylon were eventually rebuilt, and I've just explained how that possibly could happen, what would be the implications regarding the second coming of Jesus Christ to judge the world and then to rule and reign on earth? Well, my personal opinion is that the process of that magnitude would probably begin before the church is removed. That's why there was such interest when Saddam was rebuilding Babylon before the war. Then, of course, it stopped. But eyes were on that. Is this the beginning of something that's prophesied in Scripture? It wouldn't surprise me that you and I may see the beginning of the rebuilding of Babylon, the continuation of the rebuilding of Babylon, prior to the fact that we will be removed from this earth when Jesus Christ calls believers home. And obviously, if that happens, then the building process will continue, and ultimately, then the destruction will take place. God's judgment will fall before Jesus Christ then returns to rule and reign on this earth. All that to simply say, look at the signs of the times. When Jesus Christ came the first time, there were signs of the time. People just missed it. So here's the principle, I think, that grows out of this event, this story. Though no one knows when Jesus Christ will return, we should carefully consider what appear to be signs that this awesome event may be near. And maybe that will be, at least one sign, the rebuilding of Babylon.